orchestral spindle did not spin so much as it shuddered, a massive rusted coin wobbling on the edge of a gravitational table. It was a rotating orbital bazaar that smelled of ozone, unwashed bodies, and the cloying synthetic sweetness of cheap atmospheric perfume pumped in to hide the rot. Holographic advertisements screamed in 50 languages, layering over one another until the air itself felt thick with neon static. Elias Thorne adjusted the collar of his jacket, keeping his head down. He was a man composed of sharp angles and worn edges, early 30s but carrying the weight of someone twice that age. His eyes, dark and restless, scanned the crowd with the involuntary precision of a habit he could not break. He was a ghost here, or at least he tried to be. In the churning wake of a corporate extraction job that had gone spectacularly bloody 3 years ago, anonymity was the only currency he had left. He had credits, of course, not many. Just enough to keep his ship fueled and his stomach mostly full of protein paste. But spirit? He was overdrawn on that account. He moved through the promenade, ignoring the hawkers selling sensory spikes and illegal organ prints. He was here for fuel cells, nothing else. He needed to get his ship, a beat-up hauler named the Mudlark, off this station before the docking fees ate his reserve fund. A chime rang out, a heavy brassy sound that cut through the electronic noise. It was the auction bell. Elias tried to turn away. He knew what happened at the Central Plaza auctions. The spindle was technically in neutral space, which was a polite way of saying it was a lawless jurisdiction where morality was sold by the kilo. He found himself pinned by the crowd, a tidal wave of spectators surging toward the raised plinth in the center of the market. He was shoved against a railing, forced to look. The auctioneer was a bloated Tellarite with a voice amplifier surgically grafted to his throat. He boomed over the crowd, presenting the latest lot, item number 479. The containment field shimmered and dropped, revealing the merchandise. She was Vulpine. Elias had seen her kind before, usually in the high-spire diplomatic corps of the core worlds, wearing silk robes and speaking in whispers that could end trade wars. This girl was not wearing silk. She wore a thin gray shift that looked like prison issue. She stood perhaps 5 feet and 6 inches. Her hair was a cascading storm of silver and white, matching the large, triangular fox ears that twitched atop her head. A tail, thick with silver fur, curled anxiously around her ankles. Her skin was pale, marked with the faint bioluminescent geometric patterns that marked her lineage. But they were dim, suppressed by stress or drugs. The hologram hovering above her head read, Vulpine. Translation, diplomacy, companionship. The euphemism made Elias's stomach turn. Companionship. On the spindle, that meant she was being sold as a bed warmer for someone with a fetish for exotic xenobiology. He looked at her face. That was the mistake. She was not crying. She was not trembling. Her expression was terrifyingly calm, a porcelain mask of composure. But Elias was a security fixer. He read bodies for a living. He saw the way her claws were dug into her palm so hard a single drop of violet blood welled up. He smelled the chemical spike of terror in her scent, cutting through the cheap perfume of the station. She was terrified, but she was refusing to give them the satisfaction of showing it. The bidding started at 5,000 credits. Low, insultingly low for a Vulpine, but high for the scavengers on the spindle. 6,007. Elias gripped the railing. Walk away, Thorne, he told himself. You are not a hero. You are a guy who fixes locks and breaks kneecaps, and you are currently unemployed. 10,000. The crowd parted near the front. A man stepped forward, flanked by 2 heavy combat droids. Elias froze. The air in his lungs seemed to crystallize. He knew that man. Not the name. Maybe. But the face. The slicked back oil of his hair. The chrome jaw replacement that glinted under the harsh market lights. He was a proxy for the Valenti Syndicate, a mid-rim crime ring that specialized in high-end trafficking. Elias had crossed paths with a Valenti operation on Luna 4 years ago. That operation had involved a warehouse full of missing colonists who were never found. If the Valenti were buying her, she was not going to be a translator. She was going to be disassembled, physically or psychologically, until she was a product. 12,000, the proxy said, his voice grating like metal on glass. The crowd went silent. Nobody bid against the Valenti. The auctioneer beamed. 12,000 going once. Elias looked at the girl. She had spotted the proxy. Her ears flattened against her skull. For a split second, her composure cracked, and Elias saw an abyss of absolute horror in her amber eyes. He did not think. He did not calculate his fuel budget. He did not consider the fact that he was barely eating real food. 15,000, Elias shouted. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bone. The proxy turned slowly, his chrome jaw reflecting the neon lights, fixing Elias with a dead-eyed stare. The auctioneer blinked. We have 15,000 from the gentleman in the desperate coat. Do I hear 16? The proxy narrowed his eyes. 17,000. Elias felt the sweat trickling down his spine. He checked his credit chit. He had exactly 21,412 credits. That was his life savings, his escape fund, his retirement. 20,000, Elias said, his voice steady despite the tremors in his hands. The crowd murmured, this was aggressive. This was stupid. The proxy stared at Elias. He seemed to be running a facial recognition scan. Elias prayed the shadows in his beard were enough to confuse the algorithm. The proxy sneered, clearly deciding that a debate over a single asset was beneath his budget cap for the day. He turned his back. 20,000 going once, the auctioneer shouted, sensing the tension. Twice, sold. The gavel hit the podium with a sound like a gunshot. Elias let out a breath that felt like it had been held for a week. He was broke. He was absolutely, catastrophically broke. He had just bought a person. The moral weight of the transaction felt heavier than the credit loss. You have 30 minutes to collect your asset at the rear processing corridor. The automated system chimed in his ear. Elias pushed off the railing, his legs feeling like lead. You idiot, he thought. You absolute sentimental idiot. The rear corridors of the Kestrel spindle were a maze of steam pipes and dripping hydraulic fluid, a stark contrast to the flash of the market. Elias stood by the collection gate, watching the heavy blast doors slide open. 2 station guards shoved the girl forward. She stumbled, catching herself with a grace that spoke of core world dance training, her bare feet silent on the grimy deck plates. The guards tossed a data pad at Elias. Transfer complete. She is your problem now. Buddy, no refunds on livestock. They laughed, the sound echoing down the metal hallway, and retreated, the blast doors sealing with a hiss. Elias stood alone with her. She did not move. She stood 10 feet away, her hands clasped in front of her, her tail wrapped tight around her left leg like a bandage. She watched him with eyes that were assessing, calculating, waiting for the first blow. Elias looked at the data pad. It was a standard indenture contract, nasty legal work. It gave him rights to her labor, her location, and her biology for a period of 50 years. He hated it. He hated the weight of it in his hand. He took a step toward her. She flinched, a microscopic movement. But he saw it. Relax, Elias said, his voice rough. I am not going to touch you. He held up the data pad. I recognize the man bidding on you. He said, I know where he sends people. I couldn't let that happen. She said nothing. Her ears swiveled toward his voice, analyzing the pitch, the stress levels. Elias tapped the screen, navigating to the ownership transfer menu. I am transferring the contract to you, he said. I am marking it as paid in full. You can sign the release right now. There is a shuttle dock 2 levels down. You can go wherever you want. He extended the pad toward her. Here. You are free. She looked at the pad. Then she looked at his face. She studied him like he was a puzzle with a piece missing. She looked at his worn boots, his fraying coat, the dark circles under his eyes. She did not take the pad. Take it, Elias urged. I spent every credit I had on this. Do not make me regret it. She tilted her head. The silence stretched, uncomfortable and dense. Then she spoke. Her voice was low, melodic, with a strange resonance that seemed to vibrate in his chest. Freedom handed down is not freedom, she said. Elias blinked. Excuse me. She took a step closer. The fear was gone from her scent, replaced by something sharper. Determination. If you sign that paper, you are giving me charity, she said. Charity can be revoked. Charity is a whim. I do not want your pity human. Elias stared at her. Listen, lady, I just saved your life. You want to argue semantics? I want agency, she corrected. She stepped into his personal space. She was taller than she looked on the block. She smelled of rain and iron. She looked up at him, and her amber eyes were filled with a dangerous glint, an almost comedic seriousness, like a warrior pledging fealty to a confused peasant. You purchased my chain, she said, her voice dropping to a husky whisper that made the hair on Elias's arm stand up. You paid the debt. By the laws of my people, the one who breaks the chain becomes the one tested. She leaned in, her face inches from his. He could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. Tonight, she declared, I demand to serve you. Elias's brain short-circuited. He stepped back, nearly tripping over a loose conduit. Whoa, he said, holding up his hands. Stop. Hold on. I think you are misunderstanding the situation. I am not. I did not buy you for that. He gestured vaguely at her, his face flushing. I am not looking for a night of whatever. I am trying to get you out of here. She looked at him, confused for a moment, and then a smirk curled the corner of her lips. It changed her face completely, transforming her from a tragic victim into someone with a razor-sharp edge. She laughed, a short, barking sound. You think I meant sex? She asked. Elias stammered. Well, you said serve, and you are standing very close, and the sign said companionship. So yes, that is generally the implication. She shook her head, the silver fur of her ears rippling. Typical, she muttered. She straightened her spine, her tail lashing behind her with a sudden hypnotic rhythm. Service is not submission, she said, her tone lecturing. In the Vulpine high prides, to serve is to protect. You saved my life. You expended your resources to ensure my survival. That creates a balance deficit. I cannot walk away until I have balanced the scale. She pointed a clawed finger at his chest. You are the chain breaker. I am the chain warden. I am sworn to test your worthiness and guard your life until the debt is settled. Elias rubbed his temples. This was getting complicated. Look, he said, I appreciate the offer, really. But I don't need a bodyguard. I need to get to my ship and find a job that pays actual money. Her eyes narrowed. You have enemies? Everyone has enemies. Then you need me, she said. Suddenly, she winced. tapping the side of her neck where a translation implant scar was visible. "My universal translator is calibrating," she said. "It may have chosen the wrong contextual syntax for the vow. Let me try again." She cleared her throat, stood at attention, and looked him dead in the eye. "I will attend your body." Aggressively. Elias choked. A laugh bubbled up from his chest, a mix of hysteria and genuine amusement. He coughed, trying to cover it. "Okay," he wheezed. "That is definitely worse. Please stop." She frowned, tapping her neck again. "That was also incorrect? This dialect is frustrating. I meant I will facilitate your physical preservation with extreme prejudice." "Right," Elias said, wiping his eyes. "Got it. Aggressive preservation." He looked at her, really looked at her. Under the bravado and the cultural confusion, he saw the tension in her shoulders. She was desperate to not be helpless. She was clinging to this ritual because it was the only thing that allowed her to keep her dignity. She wouldn't be a rescued pet. She would be a partner. "Fine," Elias said, sighing. "You can guard me, but only until we get to my ship. Then we renegotiate. Deal?" She nodded once, sharp and efficient. "Deal." "What is your name?" he asked. "Kaya," she said. "Elias Thorne." "Well, Elias Thorne," Kaya said, her ears swiveling toward the end of the corridor. "I suggest we move, because the men who were bidding against you are currently cutting through the lock on the service hatch behind us." Elias froze. "What?" Kaya did not flinch. She pointed with her chin. "I can hear the thermal cutter," she said. 3 men, heavy boots. They are not trying to be quiet. They assume we are cornered. Elias cursed, the Valenti proxy. He hadn't given up. He just decided not to pay. Elias reached for the heavy pistol holstered at the small of his back. It was an old kinetic slug thrower, reliable but loud. "Run," he suggested. Kaya bared her teeth. It was not a smile. It was a threat display, revealing incisors that were definitely predatory. "We withdraw," she said. To a more tactical position, the service hatch exploded inward. Sparks showered the corridor. Through the smoke, 3 figures emerged. They wore tactical armor, their faces obscured by opaque sensory masks. They held stun batons and suppression nets. They weren't here to kill. They were here to capture. "Get the fox!" one of them shouted. Elias raised his pistol and fired a warning shot into the bulkhead. "Back off!" The lead hunter ignored him, charging forward with the suppression net launcher. Elias braced himself to fire again, but Kaya moved. She did not move like a diplomat. She moved like a blur of silver light. She dropped low, sliding across the slick metal floor, ducking under the net as it whistled through the air. She used her momentum to sweep the lead hunter's legs. He went down hard, his armor clattering against the deck. Before he could rise, Kaya spun, her tail acting as a counterbalance, and kicked him squarely in the helmet. The impact cracked the sensory plate. The second hunter swung a stun baton. Kaya dodged, not away from the weapon, but inside its arc. She grabbed the hunter's wrist, twisted it with sickening precision, and used his own momentum to slam him into the wall. Elias stared, his gun forgotten for a second. Translation and diplomacy. The sign had said, "Right." The third hunter leveled a heavy blaster at Elias. Elias snapped out of his trance. He dived behind a support pillar just as a bolt of plasma scorched the air where his head had been. "Kaya, get back!" Elias yelled, popping out to return fire. Kaya vaulted over a crate, landing beside him. She was breathing hard, but she was smiling. A wild, adrenaline-fueled smile. "You shoot adequately," she noted. "I am glad you approve," Elias snapped, firing 2 rounds to keep the hunter pinned. "We need an exit." The cargo tram, Kaya said, pointing down the corridor past the hunters. The scheduling board listed a departure in 90 seconds. That is through them, Elias pointed out. Kaya glanced at the hunters. One was groaning on the floor, the other was getting back up. The shooter was pinned. Then we go through them, she said. Wait, she added, her eyes narrowing as she looked at the hunter closest to them, the one she had kicked. The cracked faceplate revealed a patch on his collar beneath the tactical gear. Elias followed her gaze. It was a small embroidered crest, a golden hawk clutching a sun. That is not a syndicate mark, Elias said. No, Kaya said, her voice turning ice cold. That is the crest of Senator Varick. Of the Terran Coalition? Elias felt a cold pit open in his stomach. A senator? Why was a coalition senator sending hit squads to kidnap a Vulpine from a backwater auction? This is not a kidnapping, Elias realized aloud. It is a retrieval. We discuss politics later, Kaya said. Now, we run. She grabbed a steam pipe, wrenched a valve open, and sent a jet of scalding white vapor across the corridor, blinding the shooter. Move, she commanded. Elias didn't argue. He sprinted, boots pounding on the metal. Kaya was right beside him, running on all fours for a few strides to gain speed before rising back to 2 legs, her agility unnatural. They burst through the steam, past the confused hunters. The tram station was ahead. The heavy cargo tram was already moving, its magnetic clamps disengaging. Jump! Elias yelled. He leaped, catching the edge of the open cargo door. His boots scrambled for purchase. He hauled himself up, gasping. He turned to look for Kaya. She was already there. She had cleared the gap with a single, graceful bound. Landing crouched in the shadows of the container, the tram accelerated, diving into the dark tunnels of the spindle's underbelly. The shouts of the hunters faded into the distance. Elias collapsed against a crate of freeze-dried rations, his chest heaving. He checked his ammo counter. 3 rounds left. He looked over at Kaya. She was sitting on a crate, smoothing her fur, trying to regain that diplomat's composure. But he saw the tremor in her hands. You are bleeding, she said softly. Elias looked down. A shard of metal from the exploding hatch had sliced his forearm. It wasn't deep, but it was messy. I am fine, he said. She ignored him. She moved across the tram car, kneeling beside him. Her presence was overwhelming in the cramped dark, the scent of her, the heat of her body, the intensity of her focus. She took his arm. Her hands were cool, her claws retracted. She inspected the wound with clinical efficiency. She ripped a strip of fabric from the hem of her shift and began to bind the cut. You fight well for a diplomat, Elias said, watching her work. I told you, she murmured, pulling the knot tight with her teeth before smoothing it down with her fingers. I am not a victim. She looked up at him. In the flickering emergency light of the tram, her eyes were luminous. You paid for the contract, Elias Thorne, but do not mistake the transaction. She pressed her hand over the bandage, holding his arm down, effectively pinning him for a moment. It wasn't aggressive, but it was dominant. It was a statement. I am not owned, she whispered. I am choosing you, and that choice is going to be very dangerous for both of us. Elias looked at her, at the fierce intelligence burning in her face. He realized then that he hadn't just bought a complication. He had invited a storm into his life, and looking at her, terrifying and beautiful in the half-light, he realized he didn't want to let the storm go. I guess we are in it now, he said. Kaya smirked, releasing his arm. Tonight, I serve, she reminded him. The comedy gone, leaving only the steel of the vow. The tram rattled deeper into the darkness, carrying them away from the light and toward a truth that would likely kill them both. The hospice was known locally as the Iron Lung, and it smelled of antiseptic, burning dust, and old desperation. It was built inside the hollowed-out carcass of a fusion engine bell, a massive cone of tungsten and ceramic that had been welded to the underside of the station's structural ring. The curvature of the walls meant there were no straight lines, only a constant, oppressive arch that seemed to lean in on the inhabitants. Elias sat on the edge of a cot that had seen better decades, let alone days. The medic, a Tellarite with a cybernetic eye that whirred every time it focused, finished sealing the cut on Elias's arm with a dermal stapler. The sound was a sharp thwip, thwip, thwip that echoed in the metallic silence. "That will hold." The medic grunted, wiping his hands on a rag that was arguably dirtier than the floor. "Keep it dry. Do not lift anything heavy. Do not get shot again. That last one is extra, but I charge for advice." Elias tossed a credit chip onto the metal tray. "Thanks, Doc." He stood up, testing the arm. It pulled tight, a dull ache radiating from the staples, but the bleeding had stopped. He looked across the small, steam-filled room to where Kaya was sitting. She was perched on a high stool, her posture rigidly vertical. She had cleaned the soot from her face, leaving her pale skin glowing in the amber light of the heating vents. Her silver hair was tied back now, severe and practical, but her ears were swiveling, tracking the hiss of the steam pipes and the distant thrum of the station's gravity generators. The medic shuffled out, the blast door hissing shut behind him, leaving them alone in the belly of the engine. Elias reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the data pad. The screen was cracked, but the legal text of the release form was still legible. He walked over to her, his boots clanking softly on the deck plates. "Sign it. Kaya," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the curved room. She did not look at the pad. She looked at his boots, then up to his knees, and finally to his eyes. Her gaze was unsettlingly direct. "We discussed this," she said. "We did not discuss it," Elias countered, frustration edging into his tone. "You gave me a speech about chains and testing. That was very poetic. But we are currently hiding in a smuggler's hole, waiting for a hit squad to sweep the sector. I am not keeping you here." He thrust the pad toward her. "You sign this. You take the back service lift to the docks, and you get on the first transport leaving the system. Go to the frontier. Go to the core. Just go away from the people who want to kill you." Kaya looked at the pad with genuine disdain. "They do not want to kill me. Elias," she said. "If they wanted me dead, they would have vaporized the auction block. They want me intact." She hopped off the stool. Her movement was fluid, a sudden shift from statue to predator. She circled him, her tail dragging lightly across his shins, a sensation that made him want to jump out of his skin. "You spent 20,000 credits on me," she noted. "You have no ship fuel. You have no weapons aside from that archaic pistol. You are, by all metrics, ruined, and yet you try to discard your investment. It is not an investment," Elias snapped. "It is a life, precisely," she said. "And my life is not yours to give back, because I never gave it to you. I am not a thing you can release, because I was never a thing you truly owned." She stopped in front of him, reaching out to tap the datapad with a sharp claw. "I will make you a counteroffer, Chainbreaker." Elias rubbed his face with his good hand. "I am not negotiating a surrender treaty. I am trying to save your neck. I will sign your papers," she said, her voice dropping to that husky, resonant register. "But not today. We have a debt of balance. You saved me. I must ensure you survive the consequences of that action." She held up 3 fingers. 72 hours, she said. We survive the next 72 hours. If we are both breathing at the end of that time, I will sign your release. I will disappear. And you can go back to being a noble, broke security guard.
To be honest.
Elias stared at her.
Unfortunately.
Why 72 hours? Because that is how long the memory thread will last before it degrades into static, she said. The room went very quiet. The steam vents seemed to hold their breath. The what? Elias asked. Kaya turned away, walking toward the small, circular porthole that looked out onto the black vacuum of space. She unbuttoned the top of her collar, pulling the fabric aside to reveal the base of her neck. There, just below the hairline. The skin was slightly raised, glowing with a faint, pulsing blue light. It wasn't a standard neural jack. It was organic, woven into the spine. I was not sold because I am a pretty face, Kaya said, buttoning her collar back up. I was sold because I am a thief. Elias stepped closer, his security instincts flaring. What did you steal? I did not steal credits, she said. I stole a conversation. She turned to face him. Her tail gave a violent twitch, lashing to the left. She reached back and grabbed it, holding the tip still with her hand, a flash of annoyance crossing her face. Stop that, she hissed at her own tail. She looked back at Elias, clearing her throat. I was a junior attaché for the Vulpine delegation to the Trade Federation. I was working a reception at the Grand Spire. I overheard a meeting in a secure sensory deprivation room. My biology allows me to hear frequencies that standard dampeners do not block. Elias crossed his arms. What did you hear? I heard a senator discussing a breeding program, she said. A black site facility in the Outer Rim. They are not just breeding soldiers, Elias. They are breeding bio-coded assassins, Vulpine children, stripped of culture, programmed with loyalty wetware, and sold to the highest bidder as executive protection. Elias felt the blood drain from his face. That is war crimes territory. That is sector war territory. Yes, she said. And the man buying the program was an executive from OmniCorp. The man selling the rights? He was my own ambassador. She let go of her tail. It immediately began to swish back and forth, a slow, hypnotic metronome. I recorded it, she said. I have a memory thread implant. It allows me to store raw sensory data in my nervous system. I recorded the voice prints, the retinal scans, the transaction codes, everything. She tapped her chest. It is all in here. But the file is too large for my organic storage. It is rewriting my neural pathways. If I do not offload it in 72 hours, it will overwrite my autonomic functions. My heart will stop. Elias stared at her. He looked at the fragile curve of her neck, the silver ears that twitched with every sound, the tail that she couldn't seem to control. She was walking evidence of a conspiracy that could burn down half the galaxy. So the Valenti proxy wasn't buying a companion, Elias realized. He was buying a hard drive. Correct, Kaya said. And now you own the hard drive. She smiled, but it was tight. Her tail was wagging faster now, sweeping the air with an anxious energy that betrayed her calm expression. She noticed him looking at it and growled low in her throat, grabbing the appendage again and tucking it firmly between her legs. My body is a traitor, she muttered, her cheeks flushing a faint violet. It betrays my anxiety. Ignore it. Elias felt a laugh catch in his throat, but he swallowed it. The situation was too dire for laughter, yet the absurdity of it, a geopolitical crisis stored inside a woman who couldn't stop her tail from wagging, was almost too much. Okay, Elias said, exhaling slowly. 72 hours. We get the data out of you. We expose the bastards. Then you sign the papers. Agreed, she said, Where do we go? Elias asked. I assume you have a plan. You seem to have a plan for everything. Lumen Vale, she said. Elias groaned. The Casino Moon? That is the most expensive, most surveilled rock in the sector. It is also the home of the Whisper Broker, Kaya said. He is the only data merchant capable of extracting a bio-coded thread without frying my brain. He operates out of the Gilded Lily Casino. We have an appointment. Of course we do, Elias said. The sleeping quarters of the engine bell were not designed for two people. There was a single bunk bolted to the wall, a narrow slab of foam that smelled of recycled air. Elias sat on the floor, his back against the cold metal of the door, checking the charge on his pistol. Kaya sat on the bunk, her legs drawn up to her chest, watching him. The air in the room was heavy, thick with the heat radiating from the engine core and the tension radiating from them. Why did you do it? Kaya asked softly. Elias didn't look up. Do what? Buy me. You said you saw the proxy and you couldn't let it happen. That is a reaction, not a reason. A man like you, a man who counts his credits before he buys coffee, does not spend his life savings on a stranger without a ghost pushing him. Elias slid the magazine back into the pistol with a metallic click. He holstered the weapon and looked at her. She was watching him with that intense, analytical gaze. Her ears were forward, listening not just to his words, but to his heartbeat. I was security, Elias said, his voice rough. For a mining corp on Cestus Faux, it was a good job, good pay. I wore a uniform. I told myself I was keeping the peace. He leaned his head back against the door, closing his eyes. There was a strike. The miners wanted air scrubbers that didn't give them lung rot. Management called it an insurrection. They ordered us to clear the habitat dome. He paused. The memory was always there. A sharp shard of glass in the back of his mind. They told us the dome was empty. They said the families had been evacuated. They ordered us to vent the atmosphere to flush out the holdouts. Kaya was silent. The only sound was the hum of the ventilation. I followed orders, Elias whispered. I vented the dome. It wasn't empty. He opened his eyes. He looked at his hands, expecting to see blood, but seeing only grease and old scars. I listened to them die over the comms. Fathers, mothers, children. I stood at the console and I watched the oxygen levels drop to 0, and I did nothing because I was following orders. He looked at Kaya. Her face was unreadable, but her tail had stopped moving. It lay still on the blanket. When I saw you on that block, Elias said, when I saw the Valenti proxy, I knew what was going to happen to you. And I knew that if I walked away, if I saved my money and bought my fuel, I would be doing it again. I would be venting the dome. He let out a shaky breath. I couldn't do it again. I am not a hero. Kaya. I am just a man who is tired of being the villain in his own head. Kaya moved. She slid off the bunk and knelt on the floor in front of him. She didn't touch him, but she was close enough that he could feel the warmth of her breath. Regret is a heavy stone. Elias, she said softly, you can carry it until it crushes you. Or you can use it to build something. She tilted her head. Remorse is useless without action. You acted today. You broke the chain. That does not wash the blood from Cestus Far, but it means you are no longer the man who pushed the button. Elias looked at her. The vulnerability in her eyes was startling. For a moment, the air between them felt charged, electric. He saw the pulse jumping in her throat. He saw the way her pupils dilated. He wanted to reach out. He wanted to touch the silver fur of her cheek, to see if she was real. Kaya leaned in slightly. Her scent, rain and ozone, filled his senses. Do not misunderstand, she whispered. I am not a purchase. I am not a prize for your redemption tour. She placed a hand on his knee. Her claws were retracted, her palm warm and firm. If you want me, Elias, you must want the woman, not the salvation. You must want my choice, not my situation. Elias swallowed hard. I know, he said, his voice straining. I know that. Good, she said. She pulled back, the moment breaking like a fever. She stood up, brushing off her knees. Now, get some sleep. Chainbreaker. We have a casino to infiltrate in the morning, and I refuse to be seen with a man who has bags under his eyes. It ruins the aesthetic. She climbed back into the bunk, curling up into a tight ball of silver fur and limbs. Elias stayed on the floor. He didn't sleep for a long time. He just listened to the steady rhythm of her breathing, and for the first time in 3 years, the ghosts of Cestus Thophor were quiet. Lumen Vale was a lie constructed of glass and light. It was a moon entirely paved over with casinos, pleasure domes, and landing pads. From orbit, it looked like a disco ball dropped into a gravity well. They landed the Mudlark in the cheap district, far from the glittering spires of the high roller ring. Elias had spent his last remaining loose credits on a suit from a second-hand fabricator. It was a dark, synthetic weave that fit surprisingly well, hiding the holster at his back. Kaya, however, was a revelation. She had raided the Mudlark's emergency cargo, which apparently included a stash of silk tarps, and fashioned a gown that defied engineering. It was a deep, shimmering violet that matched the bioluminescence of her skin. She had pinned her ears back with silver clips and painted her claws with engine grease she had transmuted into a glossy black lacquer. She looked like royalty. She looked like she owned the moon. They walked through the velvet-lined corridors of the Gilded Lily, the most exclusive casino on the surface. The air smelled of money, literally. The oxygen was scented with crushed pearls and vanilla. Keep your head up, Kaya murmured, her arm looped through his. You look like you are expecting a beating. Aristocrats do not expect beatings. They expect appetizers. I feel ridiculous, Elias muttered through a fixed smile. You look adequate, she assured him. Now, observe the guard at the turbo lift. He is bored. He is looking at the waitress, not the guests. We walk past him as if he is furniture. They approached the bank of elevators that led to the penthouse suites. The guard, a hulking bioroid, started to turn toward them. Kaya laughed, a high, tinkling sound that sounded nothing like her usual voice. She leaned into Elias, whispering something loud enough to be heard, and then the Duke said, "But madam, the gravity is entirely optional." Can you imagine? She flashed a dazzling smile at the guard, not breaking stride. Evening, officer. She breezed. The guard blinked, dazzled by the sudden assault of charm and violet silk. He nodded dumbly. Ma'am, sir. They swept past him and into the elevator. The doors slid shut, sealing them in a box of mirrored glass. The moment the doors closed, Kaya slumped against the wall, her face dropping into a mask of exhaustion. I hate them, she hissed. I hate them all. Did you see the collar on that Baroness? It was made of endangered fur. I wanted to rip it off and strangle her with it. You were very convincing, Elias said, watching their infinite reflections in the mirrors. It is a performance, she said, straightening up. Survival is always a performance. She looked at the floor indicator. We are going to the 80th floor. The Whisper Broker is in suite 804. Elias felt his hands shaking. The adrenaline was hitting him now. This was it. The decoding. The evidence. The end of the chase. He clenched his fists, trying to stop the tremors. Kaya saw it. She watched his hands in the reflection. She moved. She stepped in front of him, pressing him back against the mirrored wall. Elias froze. Kaya. Hush, she whispered. She pressed her body against his. It was intimate, shocking. He could feel every curve, every tense muscle. She reached down, her hands sliding under his open jacket. For a second, Elias's heart hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He thought she was going to kiss him. He wanted her to kiss him. But her hands didn't go to his face. They went to his waist. She checked the position of his gun, adjusting it slightly so the print wouldn't show through the suit. Then she placed her hands on his chest, right over his heart, and pressed down firmly. Breathe, she commanded, her face inches from his. Her eyes were locked on his. There was no seduction in them, only a fierce, grounding intensity. Your heart is beating like a trapped bird, she said. You are going to give us away. I am nervous, Elias admitted, his voice barely a breath. Do not be, she said. I am the asset. You are just the man holding the leash. That is the role. Play it. She didn't pull away. She stayed there, pinning him. Her body a warm weight that grounded him in the physical reality of the moment. The infinite reflections around them showed a couple in a passionate embrace. But in the center, it was something else. It was a transfer of strength. She was steadying him. She was holding him together. Better? She asked. Elias took a deep breath, inhaling her scent. Better. She stepped back just as the elevator chimed. The doors slid open. Suite 804 was a sprawling penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the neon crater of the casino district. It was also a crime scene. Elias drew his gun before the doors were fully open. Stay behind me, he ordered. They stepped into the suite. The furniture was overturned. A glass sculpture of a nebula had been shattered, scattering glittering dust across the carpet. In the center of the room, slumped over a desk made of black marble, was the whisper broker. He was a Tellarite, like the auctioneer, but much better dressed. He was also very dead, a single clean cauterized hole through the back of his skull. Kaya gasped, her hand going to her mouth. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Elias swept the room, checking the corners. Clear. He holstered his gun and moved to the body. He touched the broker's neck. Cold. He's been dead for hours, Elias said grimly. He looked at the desk. The data terminals had been smashed. The memory drives were ripped out. They knew, Kaya said, her voice trembling. They knew we were coming. Elias looked up. On the far wall, written in what looked like the broker's own violet blood, was a message. The letters were jagged, hasty, but clear. Return the Vulpine asset. Elias stared at the words. The threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. They turned around. Elias said, We have to go. Now. Kaya stood frozen, staring at the message. Her tail was bristling, puffed out to twice its normal size. Her ears were flattened against her skull. Kaya, Elias said, grabbing her arm. We have to move. She looked at him. The fear was there, yes. But something else was rising behind it, a cold, hard fury. She looked at the dead broker. She looked at the smashed terminals. She looked at the message that reduced her to an object, an asset, a thing to be returned. She turned to Elias. She reached up and took his face in her hands. Her claws pricked his skin slightly, sharp and dangerous. Elias, she said. We are leaving, he urged. We can find another broker and we can... Stop, she said. She pulled his face down until their foreheads touched. They killed him to blind us, she whispered. They think that without the decoder. I am just a walking bomb. They think I will come crawling back to them to stop the noise in my head. She pulled back, her amber eyes burning with a terrifying resolve. They are wrong. She leaned into his ear, her lips brushing the shell of it. Tonight, I serve, she whispered. The humor was gone. The hesitation was gone. You will let me, she added. Elias looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the shift. She wasn't asking for permission to be his bodyguard anymore. She was telling him that she was taking command of the violence. She was done running. He nodded, a slow, solemn acceptance. Okay, he said. You lead. Kaya turned toward the door, her silk dress rustling like the sound of a blade being drawn. We are not going back to the ship, she said. If they want the asset, they can have her. But they are going to choke on the delivery. She walked out of the suite, stepping over the shattered glass, her head high, her tail swaying with a deadly predatory rhythm. Elias followed her, his hand on his gun, knowing that the easy part was over. The 72 hours had just begun, and the clock was ticking louder than a bomb. The maintenance tunnels beneath the Gilded Lily were a stark, subterranean intestine of the casino moon. While the floors above smelled of vanilla and credit chips, down here it smelled of recycled gray water and ozone. Elias Thorne ran, his boots skidding on the slime-coated grating. Behind him, the violet silk of Kaya's dress, now torn at the hem and stained with grease, flashed like a beacon in the dim service lights. Keep moving, Elias hissed, glancing back at the tunnel intersection. I am moving, Kaya snapped, breathless. I am moving with significant difficulty because this dress was designed for standing still and holding a martini, not sprinting through a sewer. They weren't being chased by the hunters yet. They were being chased by something far more persistent. A low, mechanical whirring sound echoed off the damp walls, followed by a chirpy, synthesized voice. Sanitation violation detected, the voice announced. Organic contaminants identified. Please halt for mandatory sterilization. A spherical cleaning drone, roughly the size of a beach ball and armed with rotating scrub brushes and a high-pressure chemical sprayer, zoomed around the corner. It had a single red optic that locked onto the mud on Elias's boots. It's gaining on us, Kaya said, her voice rising an octave. Elias, shoot it. I am not wasting ammo on a janitor bot, Elias said, vaulting over a steam pipe. Just find the service hatch. The drone accelerated, its brushes spinning with menacing speed. Dirt is the enemy of profit, it chirped. Prepare for exfoliation. There. Kaya pointed to a circular hatch wheel set into the wall ahead. Elias grabbed the wheel and heaved. It was rusted tight. The drone was 10 feet away, extending a nozzle that dripped with frothing blue acid soap. Kaya shoved Elias aside. Allow me. She didn't use her hands. She spun, slamming her heel into the locking mechanism with a precise kinetic crack. The rust shattered. She grabbed the wheel and spun it, the door groaning open. In, she ordered. Elias scrambled through the opening. Kaya followed, diving headfirst. Elias grabbed the interior handle to seal it, pulling hard. The heavy steel door swung shut with a resounding clang. Safe, Elias breathed, leaning against the cold metal. A muffled yelp came from the floor. Elias looked down. Kaya was pressed against the bulkhead, her face a mask of pained indignation. Her hands were gripping the edge of the doorframe. Open it, she whispered, her voice tight. What? Why? That thing is trying to chemically peel us. Open the door. Elias? Elias looked closer. The door was sealed, but protruding from the bottom of the jamb, pinned tight between the steel and the seal, was a tuft of silver fur. Oh, Elias said, the realization hitting him. Your tail. Kaya's eyes watered. It is pinched. It is significantly pinched. Elias scrambled to the wheel. I am sorry. Hold on. He cranked the wheel. The door cracked open an inch. Kaya yanked her tail free with a hiss, cradling the appendage against her chest. She inspected the tip, blowing on the matted fur. Is it broken? Elias asked, wincing sympathetically. It is bruised, she muttered, glaring at him. And it is offended. Do you know how sensitive a vulpine tail is? It is an extension of the spine. You just slammed a blast door on my nervous system. I didn't do it on purpose. Elias defended. We were being hunted by a soap robot. She stood up, shaking out the tail. It gave a twitch, then hung limp, clearly sulking. We need new clothes, she stated, changing the subject with a diplomat's pivot. If we walk into the lower sectors looking like refugees from a gala, we will be spotted in seconds. They found a locker room used by the tunnel maintenance crews. Inside, they found orange jumpsuits that smelled of stale sweat and lubricant. Kaya held hers up. It was 3 sizes too big. Fashion is dead, she declared mournfully. She disappeared behind a row of lockers. Elias changed quickly, stuffing his suit into a waste bin. He kept his gun belt, strapping it over the orange fabric. When Kaya emerged, she had rolled the sleeves and pant legs of the jumpsuit, cinching the waist with a length of wire she found on the floor. She had tucked her tail down one pant leg, giving her a slightly lopsided gait, and pulled a grease-stained cap low over her ears. She looked ridiculous. She looked adorable. Stop staring, she warned, or I will report you for a sanitation violation. Elias laughed. It was a short, sharp sound, but it felt good. It broke the tension of the murder they had just left behind. They moved deeper into the Undercity, the noise of the casino district fading into the rhythmic thrum of the moon's atmospheric processors. They found a quiet alcove near a ventilation fan to rest. Kaya sat on a crate, pulling her cap down, her expression darkening. The humor of the chase evaporated, replaced by the weight of the dead broker. He knew who I was, Kaya said quietly. The message on the wall. They know I am the leak. Elias sat opposite her. You said you were an attaché, a diplomat. She looked at her hands, stained with tunnel grime. I lied, she said. Elias stiffened. About what? About my rank. She said, I am not a princess. I am not high-born. I am a civil servant. Elias. My parents were archivists. I tested into the diplomatic corps on merit. I worked 18 hours a day filing treaties on grain tariffs just to get a seat at the table. She looked up, her amber eyes wet. That is why they sold me. If I were a high daughter of a clan matriarch, my government would have started a war to get me back. But I am just Kaya. I am a rounding error. When I found out about the breeding program, the ambassador didn't just panic. He calculated. He realized that selling me to the corporation was cleaner than admitting he had been bribed. She let out a bitter laugh. He signed my indenture papers himself. He categorized me as surplus labor. My own government sold me to keep the peace with a megacorp. Elias felt a surge of anger so hot it burned his throat. He reached out, covering her hand with his. You are not surplus, he said firmly. She looked at his hand, then at his face. I am a loose end, she corrected. And so are you, now. We need to get that thread out of your head, Elias said. We need to know exactly what is on it so we can burn them down. The whisper broker is dead, she reminded him. There are other brokers, Elias said. I know a guy, an outlaw tech. He operates out of a scrap hauler in the wreckage belt, just off orbit. He owes me a favor from the Cestus 4 days. Is he trustworthy? Kaya asked. No, Elias said honestly, but he is greedy, and he hates the corporations more than he loves money. The scrap hauler was a hideous amalgamation of welded metal plates drifting in the debris field of Lumen Vale. It looked like a floating junkyard. They docked the Mudlark, which Elias had remote piloted to a lower orbit, and boarded the hauler through a pressurized airlock that smelled of burnt circuitry. The technician, a four-armed glitchkin named Drix, met them in the central workshop. He was surrounded by floating holographic screens and piles of disassembled droids. Elias, Drix buzzed, his voice synthesized through a vox box. You look terrible, and you brought a fox. I thought you were allergic to pets. She is not a pet, Elias said, stepping forward. She is a client, and we need a memory rip. Level 10 encryption, bio-coded. Drix's four eyes widened. Level 10? That is government grade. That is melt your cortex grade. Can you do it? Kaya asked, stepping out from behind Elias. She had removed the cap, her ears twitching in the static-heavy air of the workshop. Drix looked at her, his upper arms crossing while his lower arms continued to solder a circuit board. I can do it, he said, but I do not have a full immersion tank. I have a manual interface. He pointed to a dentist's chair rigged with terrifying amounts of cabling. To rip a bio-coded thread without a tank. I need a sync anchor, Drix explained. Someone to share the neural load. Otherwise, the feedback loop stops her heart. He pointed a soldering iron at Elias. You are the anchor. Me? Elias blinked. I am not psychic. You do not need to be psychic, Drix said. You just need to be compatible, and you need to be willing to let her nervous system use your biorhythm as a ground wire. It hurts. A lot. Elias looked at Kaya. She was pale. She knew what this meant. Do it, Elias said. Kaya sat in the chair, the cables attached to the port at the base of her neck. Elias sat on a stool beside her, his sleeve rolled up. Drix attached a series of electrodes to Elias's wrist and temple. This is intimate, Kaya whispered. She wasn't looking at Drix. She was looking at Elias. Explain, Elias said, his voice steady, though his pulse was jumping. The sync, she said. We will not just share data. We will share sensation. You will feel my fear. You will feel my pain. You might feel other things. It requires absolute biological trust. She reached out, her hand hovering over his. I need your consent, Elias, explicitly. If you fight the connection, if you pull away when it gets heavy, the feedback will scramble my frontal lobe. You have to stay with me. Elias took her hand. His grip was firm. I am not going anywhere. Kaya, I am with you. She searched his face, looking for any sign of hesitation. Finding none, she nodded. Okay, she whispered. Drix, she called out. Initiate. The world turned white. It wasn't a visual whiteness. It was a sensation, like diving into a pool of ice water that was also on fire. Elias gasped, his back arching. He felt a sudden crushing weight in his chest, but it wasn't his anxiety. It was hers. It was a terrified, bird-like fluttering of a heart that beat twice as fast as his own. He felt the phantom sensation of ears flattening against a skull. He felt the phantom lash of a tail. Elias, a voice echoed in his mind. It wasn't sound. It was thought. I have you, he thought back, gritting his teeth against the vertigo. I am here. Then the images came. They didn't flicker like a screen. They exploded like memories he had lived. He was standing in a room of black glass. The air was cold. A man with a senator's crest, Senator Varric, was shaking hands with a woman in a corporate suit. The vote is secured, Varric said. The sound was crystal clear. The Trade Federation will approve the Border Security Act. And the assets? The woman asked. She smiled, and it was a shark smile. Omnicorp requires the raw material. The scene shifted. A laboratory. Rows of glass tubes. Inside them were Vulpine children, suspended in yellow fluid. Their eyes were open, blank, devoid of soul. They were wired. Compliance programs are active, a scientist's voiceover said. Subject 4 Alpha has successfully terminated the target. Loyalty is absolute. No moral hesitation. Elias felt Kaya's horror. It washed over him like bile. It was a physical sickness. She was screaming inside the connection, a silent psychic wail of grief for her people. Hold on, Elias projected, squeezing her hand in the real world. Stay with it. The scene shifted again. A tactical map, a hologram of a refugee station. It was labeled Sector 7, The Drift. We need a catalyst, Varick's voice said. A Vulpine attack on a human humanitarian aid convoy. The Drift is the perfect stage. We slaughter the refugees, plant Vulpine bodies with Federation weapons, and the Coalition will declare war within the hour. Timeline? 72 hours. The fleet is moving. The connection snapped. Elias fell off the stool. He hit the deck plates hard, gasping for air. His head felt like it had been split open with an axe. Kaya was slumped in the chair, her body convulsing in small, rhythmic tremors. Drix was typing furiously on his console. I got it. I got the packet. By the maker. That is heavy data. Elias scrambled to his knees and crawled to Kaya. He ripped the electrodes off his temple. Kaya? Her eyes were open but unfocused. She was shivering violently. She's in shock, Drix said, not looking up. The sync was rough. Her nervous system is rebooting. Elias didn't wait. He grabbed a thermal blanket from a pile of salvage and wrapped it around her. He pulled her out of the chair and onto the floor, pulling her into his lap. He held her tight, rocking slightly. I've got you, he murmured into her hair. I've got you. You're back. You're safe. Kaya blinked, her eyes slowly focusing on his face. Her pupils were blown wide. She let out a small, broken sound and buried her face in his chest. She didn't cry. She just shook. It was a surrender he hadn't expected. The fierce, witty diplomat was gone, replaced by a woman who had just relived the planned genocide of her kin. Elias held her, rubbing her back, feeling the knots of tension in her spine. I saw them, he whispered. I saw the children. She nodded against his chest, her hands gripping his shirt so hard the fabric tore. They are going to kill them all, she whispered, her voice cracking. To start a war. They are going to use my people as the excuse to wipe out the drift. We won't let them, Elias said. He felt a movement against his wrist. He looked down. Her tail had curled around his arm. It wasn't the anxious swishing from before. It was a tight, desperate coil anchoring herself to him. Kaya pulled back slightly. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, trying to reassemble her armor. Do not get sentimental, human, she croaked, her voice wavering. It is unbecoming. Elias looked at the tail wrapped around his wrist. He looked at her tear-streaked face. Your tail is snitching on you again, he said softly. She looked down at the limb, then let out a wet, choked laugh. Traitorous appendage, she whispered. She didn't pull it away. Drix handed them a data chip. Here is your copy, he said, and here is the bad news. The moment I decoded that thread, it sent a ping. It's a quantum entanglement dead man switch. Meaning? Elias asked, helping Kaya to her feet. Meaning every bounty hunter, corporate fixer, and government hit squad in the sector just got a GPS lock on this ship, Drix said. You have maybe 20 minutes before the cavalry arrives. And I would very much like you to not be here when they do. Where can we go? Kaya asked, her voice strengthening. Who will listen to this evidence? The Federation is compromised. The Coalition is compromised. Argo Meridian, Elias said. The Independent Station? Kaya asked. That is Deep Frontier. It is the home of the Tribunal of Free Systems, Elias said. They are the only court that doesn't take corporate money. If we can get this data to a magistrate there, they can broadcast it. They can jam the war declaration. It is a 3-day flight, Kaya said. We will be hunted every inch of the way. We have a fast ship, Elias said. Suddenly the comms panel on the wall chirped, a secure channel request. Drix frowned. That is a military frequency. How did they get my encryption keys? Elias looked at the ID tag on the screen. His blood ran cold. Commander Vance, United Sector Navy. Answer it, Elias said. Drix hit the button. A hologram flickered to life. A man in a crisp Navy uniform appeared. He was older, with iron-gray hair and a face carved from granite. He looked exactly as he had on Cestus IV, just with more medals. Elias, Vance said. His voice was calm, authoritative. Commander, Elias said, his tone icy. I know what you have. Elias, Vance said. And I know you are in over your head. You have a Vulpine asset that is about to start a war. She is not an asset, Elias said. She is a witness. Semantics, Vance said. Listen to me, son, Varric and the others. They are out of control. I want to stop this as much as you do. But you can't do it alone. The bounty on your heads is already 50 million credits. You won't make it to the sector line. What are you offering? Elias asked. Protective custody, Vance said. Bring her to me. I have a cruiser, the Aegis, holding position near the Meridian Gate. I can get you safely to the tribunal. I can protect her. Elias looked at the hologram, searching for the lie. Vance had been the one who gave the order on Cestus IV, but he had also been the one who resigned in protest afterward, or so the newsfeed said. Why should I trust you? Elias asked. Because I am the only one not shooting at you, Vance said. Think about it, Elias. Don't let your pride get the girl killed. The hologram cut out. Elias stared at the blank screen. He's lying, Kaya said instantly. Maybe, Elias said. Or maybe he's our only shot at getting past the blockade. He turned to Kaya. I served with him for 10 years. He is a hard man, but he has a code. He had a code on Cestus IV, too, Kaya reminded him sharply. And you told me what that code led to. She stepped closer, her eyes fierce. Trust is not a default setting. Elias, trust is earned with risk. What do you want to do? Elias asked. We go to the rendezvous, she said. We use his cover to get close to the Meridian Gate. But we do not board his ship. That is dangerous, Elias said. If you want to believe your commander, Kaya said, her voice dropping low, you must be ready to betray him. You must be ready to put a bullet in him if he reaches for her. Can you do that? Elias looked at his gun. He thought about the memory of the air venting from the dome. Yes, he said. Good, she said. Suddenly, the hull of the scrap hauler shuddered violently. An explosion rocked the station. Drix screamed, My perimeter drones, they're here! A laser blast blew the airlock door off its hinges. Smoke filled the workshop. Go! Drix yelled, pulling a massive plasma cannon from under his workbench. Get to your ship. I will hold them off. Elias grabbed Kaya's hand. Run! They sprinted through the sparks and debris, dodging falling metal. They reached the Mudlark's docking tube just as a squad of armored mercenaries breached the main bay. Elias shoved Kaya into the airlock and slammed the release. Inside the cockpit of the Mudlark, Elias threw himself into the pilot's seat. Kaya strapped into the co-pilot chair, her fingers flying across the nav computer. "Shields up," she yelled. Elias punched the thrusters. The Mudlark tore away from the scrap hauler, engines screaming. Through the viewport, they saw the mercenary ships, sleek, black interceptors swarming the debris field, green laser fire stitched across the Mudlark's hull. The ship shook violently. Elias banked hard, pulling high Gs. Kaya gasped, her hand shooting out to grab his arm. "We are not going to make the jump point," she yelled over the proximity alarms. "Watch me!" Elias shouted. He diverted all power to the rear deflectors and spun the ship, flying backward through the debris field, using the floating junk as cover. It was insane flying. It was suicidal. He threaded the needle between two halves of a destroyed frigate, the interceptors smashing into the metal behind them. "Clear space!" Kaya shouted, spooling the drive. Elias locked the coordinates for the Meridian Gate. "Punch it!" The stars stretched into lines of white light, and the Mudlark vanished into hyperspace. Silence returned to the cockpit. The roar of the engines settled into a steady hum. Elias slumped in his seat, adrenaline crashing out of his system. He looked over at Kaya. She was staring at the star lines, her chest heaving. She looked terrified, exhausted, and incredibly alive. He unbuckled his harness and leaned toward her. She turned to him. The space between them was charged with something hotter than the engine core. The sink had opened a door in their minds, and it hadn't fully closed. He could still feel the echo of her fear, and she could undoubtedly feel the echo of his fierce, protective desperation. "Elias." She breathed. He reached out, his hand cupping her cheek. Her skin was soft, the fur at her temple silky under his thumb. "We made it," he whispered. He leaned in. She didn't pull away. Her eyes fluttered shut, her lips parting slightly. Her scent filled his lungs, ozone, fear, and something sweet like vanilla. He was an inch away. He could feel the heat of her skin. Beep, beep, beep. The proximity alarm screamed, shattering the moment. Kaya's eyes snapped open. She pulled back, turning to the console. "Tracker signal," she yelled. "We have a limpet mine attached to the hull." Elias cursed, falling back into his seat. "Romance later," Kaya said, her voice breathless but steady, a laugh bubbling under the panic. "Survival now." Elias looked at her. She was already typing, isolating the signal, calculating the blast radius. She wasn't waiting for him to save her. She was saving them. And in that moment, with the alarm blaring and death clamped to their hull, Elias Thorne realized the truth. He wasn't just helping her. He wasn't just attracted to her. He was falling in love with her, not because she was beautiful, and not because she was a victim, but because she refused to be anyone's victim, even his. "Isolate the frequency," he yelled, grabbing the controls. "I am on it," she shouted back. The Mudlark hurtled through the dark, carrying two people who had just realized that the only thing more dangerous than the conspiracy chasing them was the feeling growing between them. The Mudlark was gone. It was now a field of expanding debris in the silent vacuum of the sector fringe. A sacrifice made to detonate the limpet mine that had been clamped to its hull. Elias Thorne watched the tactical display on the bridge of their savior vessel, feeling a phantom limb pain for his old ship. It had been a bucket of bolts, but it was his bucket of bolts. Now, he and Kaya were passengers on the Rusty Saint, a bulk freighter that looked less like a spaceship and more like a collection of industrial accidents flying in formation. The captain had taken their credits, the last of Elias's emergency stash, without asking for IDs. That was the good news. The bad news was the crew. Elias sat in the communal galley, staring at a cup of liquid that claimed to be tea but smelled aggressively of engine coolant. "It is a tragedy," a metallic voice intoned from the corner, a veritable sin against the sacraments of hydration. Elias looked up. Father Circuit, a decommissioned chaplain droid with a rusted chassis and a permanent tilt to the left, was shaking his head. The droid wore a tattered stole made of hazard tape. "Do you require confession, my son?" Father Circuit asked, his optical sensors whirring. "You look like a man burdened by the heavy weight of poor beverage choices, and perhaps murder, but mostly the beverage." "I am fine, Father," Elias grunted. From the stove, a four-armed Tellarite chef named Gorg slammed a cleaver into a cutting board with enough force to rattle the deck plates. "You drink the tea," Gorg bellowed, waving a ladle like a mace. "That is my grandmother's recipe. It is brewed from the finest moss in the recycling filters." "You disrespect the moss. You disrespect Gorg." "I love the moss," Elias lied quickly, taking a sip and trying not to wince as it burned a path down his throat. Sitting across from Elias was Vax, a spindly humanoid with skin the color of polished mahogany and eyes that had seen too many losing hands of sabak. Vax was shuffling a deck of holographic cards, narrating the room's events in a breathless whisper. The tension in the galley was palpable. Vax murmured to an invisible audience. The stranger drank the poison, knowing that one wrong move would result in a culinary execution. His eyes darted to the door. Would he survive the lunch rush? The odds were not in his favor. Elias rubbed his temples. This was the motliest crew he had ever encountered. The blast door hissed open, and Kaya stepped in. The galley went silent. Even Gorg lowered his ladle. Kaya was wearing a borrowed mechanic's jumpsuit that she had cinched at the waist with a belt made of cargo strapping. She had washed the grease from her fur, and her silver hair was tied back in a severe warrior's knot. But it was her presence that filled the room. She didn't walk, she stalked. Her tail moved with a hypnotic, slow rhythm, signaling a calm she definitely did not feel. She ignored the staring crew and slid into the bench beside Elias. "We have a problem," she said, her voice low. "Worse than the tea?" Elias asked. She tapped the holopad built into the table. "Look at the news feed." Elias looked. The grainy projection hovered between them. It was a coalition news network alert. A red banner scrolled across the bottom. "Terrorist threat identified." Above the text was a picture of Kaya. It was a high-resolution image taken from the auction block, her eyes wide with fear. But the caption told a different story. Kaya of the Vulpine High Prides, wanted for espionage, treason, and the murder of a sector data broker, dangerous and armed. Elias read the bounty, 5 million credits, alive or dead. They escalated quickly, Elias muttered. "They are controlling the narrative. They are painting a target on my back the size of a moon," Kaya said. She looked around the galley. Father Circuit was staring at the screen. Gorg was squinting at Kaya, then at the image, then back at Kaya. Vax had stopped shuffling his cards. "The plot thickens," Vax whispered, his eyes widening. "The beautiful refugee is actually a deadly assassin. The stakes have just quadrupled. Will the crew turn on them for the payout, or will loyalty prevail?" Gorg pointed his cleaver at Kaya. "You are 5 million credits?" Kaya didn't flinch. She picked up Elias's cup of moss tea, took a sip, and set it down without grimacing. "I am worth significantly more than that," she said coolly. "But if you try to collect, you will find that I am very difficult to package." Gorg stared at her. Then he grunted, impressed by her tolerance of his cooking. "Soup is at 1900 hours, the chef announced. "Don't be late." He went back to chopping. The tension broke, but only on the surface. Elias knew that 5 million credits was enough to make even a saint reconsider their vows, let alone a rusty robot priest and a gambling addict. Come on, Elias said, standing up. We should get some rest. Their cabin was a repurposed storage closet near the engine room. It was hot, loud, and vibrated constantly. There was a single bunk and a pile of cargo nets. Elias locked the door and jammed a metal pipe under the handle for good measure. He turned to Kaya. She was standing in the center of the small room, her back to him, staring at the blank metal wall. Her ears were flattened against her skull. "Hey," Elias said softly. "We are okay." They didn't make a move. Kaya turned around. Her eyes were blazing with a mix of fury and fear. "They are calling me a terrorist," she hissed. "I tried to save my people and they brand me a monster." "It is a standard play," Elias said. "Discredit the witness." She paced the small room, her tail lashing back and forth like a whip. "I am not a victim. Elias, I am a diplomat. I am a servant of the high prides." She stopped in front of him, looking up into his face. "You need to understand something," she said. "You need to understand what you bought." "I know what I bought," Elias said. "I bought a contract to keep you safe." "No," she corrected sharply. "You bought a chain." She took a breath, forcing her shoulders to drop. "In my culture, we do not have bodyguards in the human sense. We have the vow of the chain. When you broke my indenture, you took the weight of my life into your hands. That is not a passive act. It creates a bond." She stepped closer, placing a hand on his chest. "To serve, Elias, means that I am sworn to protect your life and your honor. I stand between you and the dark. I test you to ensure you are strong enough to lead, and I guard you when you are weak." She looked down at his chest, watching the rise and fall of his breathing. "But the vow has a clause. I serve only until the chainbreaker proves unworthy, until he shows cowardice, or cruelty, or betrayal." Elias covered her hand with his. "Have I been cruel?" "No," she whispered. "Have I been a coward?" "No." "Then what is the problem?" "The problem," she said, her voice trembling, "is that I am terrified you might be unworthy. Because I want you anyway." She looked up, and the raw vulnerability in her face hit Elias like a physical blow. "A chain warden is supposed to be objective," she said. "I am supposed to judge you. But when you look at me, when you hold me, my judgment fails. I don't care if you are worthy. I just want you to stay. And that makes me a bad Vulpine. It makes me weak." Elias felt a surge of emotion that made his throat tight. He reached up and brushed a stray lock of silver hair from her forehead. "Kaya," he said, "you don't have to perform loyalty to deserve love. You don't have to be a perfect bodyguard or a perfect Vulpine to matter to me." She pulled back, her eyes flashing. "Do not talk to me about love," she snapped. "Love is a chemical defect. Love is soft." She poked him in the chest, hard. "Love isn't the point, Elias." "Choices. I was sold. I was stripped of my name and my agency. The only thing I have left is my ability to choose who I stand beside." She took a deep breath, her anger fading into a desperate sincerity. "I need to know that I am choosing you because you are the right choice, not just because you are the only choice. I need to know that I am not just transferring my chain from a master to a lover." Elias understood then. This wasn't about romance. It was about autonomy. She was trying to figure out where the compulsion ended and the person began. "We are going to figure it out," Elias promised. "I am not going to own you, Kaya, not your contract and not your heart. If you stand beside me, it is because you walked there yourself." She looked at him, searching his face for the truth. She opened her mouth to speak, but the ship's claxons cut her off. "Whoop! Whoop! Whoop!" The red emergency lights began to strobe. The intercom crackled. It was Vax's voice, but he wasn't whispering anymore. He was screaming. "Pirates! We are being boarded. They have magnetic grapples. This is the climax of the chapter. Folks, we are all going to die." Elias drew his pistol. Kaya reached into her boot and pulled out a jagged shiv she had fashioned from a piece of scrap metal. The emotional moment vanished, replaced instantly by the cold clarity of violence. "Stay behind me," Elias ordered. Kaya smirked, her ears swiveling forward. "You are adorable, chain breaker. But tonight, we dance." They burst out of the cabin and into the corridor just as the hull breached. The airlock at the end of the hall exploded inward, and smoke filled the air. Pirates poured through the gap, scavengers in mismatched armor, wielding kinetic rifles and vibration blades. They weren't the professional hit squads of the corporation. These were raiders, looking for easy loot. They found a buzzsaw instead. Elias dropped to one knee, using a crate for cover, and fired 2 controlled shots. The lead pirate crumpled. Kaya didn't take cover. She used the walls. She ran at the wall, kicked off it, and launched herself over the heads of the first wave. She landed in their midst, a whirlwind of silver fur and flashing steel. Elias shifted his aim, covering her. He shot a pirate who was raising a rifle at her back. Kaya didn't look. She knew he was there. She spun, using her tail to sweep the legs of another attacker, then drove her shiv into the shoulder of a third. It was a rhythm. It was a dance. Elias moved forward, firing, advancing. Kaya flowed around him. When he reloaded, she stepped in front, deflecting a blade with a stolen metal pipe. When she was surrounded, he tossed a flashbang grenade over her head, and she closed her eyes at the exact second it detonated, then struck while they were blinded. They fought back to back in the center of the corridor. Elias felt the heat of her body against his spine. He felt the impact every time she blocked a blow. They were a single organism with 2 heads and a dozen weapons. "Left!" Kaya shouted. Elias turned left and fired without thinking. A pirate dropped from the ceiling vent. "Clear!" Elias yelled. Kaya ducked under a swinging pipe and uppercutted a massive Wike raider, sending him crashing into the bulkhead. Suddenly, the gravity generators fluctuated, a side effect of the ship's erratic systems. For 10 seconds, they were weightless. It should have been a disaster. Instead, it was beautiful. Kaya kicked off the ceiling, spinning in 0G like a silver dart. She grabbed a pirate by his harness and threw him down the corridor. Elias anchored himself to a handrail and picked off the floaters with terrifying accuracy. Gravity slammed back on. Bodies hit the floor. Silence returned to the corridor, broken only by the hissing of steam and the groans of the defeated. Elias stood breathing hard, his gun smoking. Kaya was crouched on top of a crate, her chest heaving, her eyes wide and black with adrenaline. There was a smear of blue alien blood on her cheek. She looked at him. He looked at her. The violence had stripped away the awkwardness. The intellectual debate about choice was gone, replaced by the raw biological reality of survival. Elias holstered his gun. He walked toward her. Kaya hopped down from the crate. She didn't back away. They collided. It wasn't a hug. It was an impact. Elias grabbed her arms and she grabbed the lapels of his jacket. They slammed against the wall, bodies pressed together, hearts hammering in a chaotic syncopation. "Are you hit?" Elias demanded, his voice rough, scanning her for wounds. "No," she gasped. "You? No!" They stared at each other. The air between them was electric, thick with the scent of ozone and sweat and blood. Elias's hands slid up her arms to her shoulders, then to her neck. Her hands tangled in his shirt, pulling him closer. He could feel the heat radiating off her. Her pupils were blown wide, swallowing the amber. Her lips were parted, He wanted to kiss her. He wanted to devour her. The urge was so strong it made his knees weak. He leaned in. Her breath hitched. She tilted her head back, exposing her throat, a gesture of absolute trust, or absolute invitation. Their lips were millimeters apart. Then they stopped. It wasn't a conscious decision, and it was a mutual realization. The adrenaline was a drug, and they were both high on it. Elias pulled back an inch, his forehead resting against hers. He was shaking. "We should," Elias started, his voice a wreck. "We should check on the crew," Kaya finished, her voice breathless. "Right. The crew." They didn't move. They stayed there for another 5 seconds, breathing each other's air, acknowledging that the line had been found, and they were standing right on top of it. The pirates were rounded up and shoved into an escape pod, which Vax ejected with a theatrical flourish. Father Circuit gave them a stern lecture on the sin of theft before launching them into the void. Gorg was just angry they had interrupted his soup preparation. Later, in the quiet of the storage cabin, the adrenaline had faded into a dull, throbbing ache. Elias sat on the bunk, cleaning his pistol. Kaya was pacing again, but slower this time. She had cleaned the blood from her face. "Elias," she said. He looked up. She stopped pacing and stood in front of him. "About what I said earlier?" She began. "About being terrified." "You don't have to explain," Elias said. "I do," she insisted. She took the gun from his hands and set it on the crate. She stepped between his knees, her hands resting on his shoulders. "You fought well," she said. "You did not fight with cruelty. You fought with precision. You protected me, but you did not try to hide me. You let me be the weapon I am. That is who you are," Elias said. "I am not going to stifle that." She nodded slowly. "You are worthy, chain breaker." She leaned down, her face level with his. "And because you are worthy, I am releasing myself from the test for tonight." Elias's breath caught. "What does that mean?" She smiled. "It was a small, secret thing. The title of your story," she whispered. "I purchased a Vulpine girl, and she demands to serve me tonight." Elias blinked. "My story? Never mind," she said, brushing the fourth wall break aside. "The point is the word serve." She traced the line of his jaw with a single claw, careful and sharp. "Tonight," she whispered, her voice dropping to that husky register that turned his spine to water. "I want to reclaim that word. I do not want to serve you as a bodyguard, and I do not want to serve you as a slave." She leaned into his ear. "I want one night where my body is mine, where my desire is mine. I want to give it to you, not because you bought a contract, and not because I owe you a debt, but because I choose you." She pulled back to look him in the eye. "I want to know what it feels like to be safe enough to burn." Elias looked at her. He saw the challenge in her eyes, and the hunger. She was asking for him to accept her offer, but she was also demanding that he respect her agency. He reached up and placed his hands on her waist. "Then you lead," he said hoarsely. Kaya smiled. It was a smile of relief, of victory, and of pure, unadulterated want. "Good answer." She kissed him. It wasn't like the near miss in the hallway. It wasn't frantic. It was slow. It was deliberate. It was a question asked and answered in silence. She pushed him back onto the bunk. The mattress was thin and the room was cold, but neither of them noticed. The fade to black was not a censorship. It was a mercy, a private curtain drawn around two people who had been hunted across the stars. It was in the small details, the way her ears, usually so alert and twitching, finally relaxed, flattening softly against her head. The way his hands, usually clenched around a weapon or a steering yoke, moved with a trembling reverence over the silver fur of her spine. There was laughter, soft, surprised laughter when a knee knocked against the metal wall, and then silence. A stunned, heavy silence where the only sound was the synchronization of breath and the realization that safety, when finally found, could feel hotter than any fire. Morning on the rusty Saint did not bring sunlight. It brought the smell of burnt toast and the clatter of gorg in the galley. Elias walked into the common area looking like a man who had gone 12 rounds with a prize fighter and won. His hair was a disaster. His shirt was buttoned wrong. He walked with a slight limp and a dazed expression that suggested he had forgotten his own name. Kaya was already there. She looked infuriatingly perfect. She was sipping a cup of actual coffee, presumably bribed from Vax's stash. Her legs crossed, looking smug. "Good morning, Elias," she purred over the rim of her mug. "You look rested." Elias collapsed onto the bench opposite her. "I feel like I fell down a gravity well." Vax leaned over from the next table. The hero emerges, he narrated, battered but triumphant. The dark circles under his eyes tell a story that cannot be broadcast on public channels. Father Circuit word to life. Is it a story of sin? It looks like a story of sin. Gorg slammed a bowl of soup in front of Elias. It was gray and lumpy. "Eat," the chef commanded. "It is anti-arrogant soup. It will put strength back in your legs. You look wobbly, little human." Elias buried his face in his hands. The crew absolutely knew. Kaya just smiled, her tail giving a single satisfied thump against the bench. "Eat your soup, chain breaker," she teased. "We have work to do." Elias looked at her, and despite the exhaustion and the public humiliation, he grinned. He was in trouble. Deep, beautiful trouble. Then, the sensor alert chimed. It wasn't the frantic wail of the pirate alarm. It was a steady, rhythmic ping. Kaya's smile vanished. She set the mug down. "That is a proximity tag," she said. They ran to the cockpit. The captain, a silent, multi-limbed creature who communicated only in shrugs, pointed at the screen. A single ship was trailing them. It was staying just out of weapons range, matching their vector perfectly. "It's an interceptor," Elias said, reading the signature to Coalition Navy. "How did they find us?" Kaya asked. "We ditched the Mudlark. We detonated the mine. We are ghosting on an unregistered freighter." Elias stared at the screen. He watched the interceptor mimic their course correction. "Vance," Elias said, the realization tasting like ash in his mouth. "He didn't just give me the rendezvous coordinates," Elias explained, his voice hard. "When I opened that secure channel on the scrap hauler, the handshake protocol, it didn't just decrypt the video feed, it uploaded a sleeper tag to my personal comms." He pulled his comm unit from his pocket. It looked innocent enough. "He tracked me," Elias said. "Not the ship. Me." Kaya looked at the interceptor on the screen. "He's hurting us," she realized. "He isn't attacking because he wants us to go to the rendezvous. He wants to lead us into the trap." Elias crushed the comm unit in his hand until the plastic cracked. "He thinks we are running," Elias said. "He thinks we are scared rabbits trying to find a hole." He looked at Kaya. The softness of the morning was gone. The warrior was back. "Are we rabbits?" Elias asked. Kaya bared her teeth. "No," she said. "We are the hunters." Elias turned to the captain. "Drop us out of warp," he ordered. The captain shrugged, but reached for the lever. "What are we doing?" Vax asked from the doorway, looking terrified. The protagonists make a fatal error. No, Elias said, drawing his pistol and checking the charge. We are done running. We are going to turn this ship around, and we are going to invite the commander to dinner. Kaya stood beside him, her tail lashing, her eyes cold and sharp. Tonight, she said, echoing the vow but with a new, darker meaning. We serve them a reckoning. Argo Meridian was not a space station so much as it was a desperate architectural afterthought clinging to a dead god. The station orbited a jagged monolithic slab of black stone, an artifact of unknown alien origin that defied every sensor scan known to modern science. The stone did not emit radiation, but it emitted pressure. It was a psychic weight, a heavy moral gravity that permeated every deck and bulkhead of the station bolted to its side. Local superstitions claimed the monolith hated deception. Scientists called it a psychosomatic stress inducer triggered by dissonance in the frontal lobe. The locals just called it the truth ache. If you lied on Argo Meridian, you bled from the nose. If you lied about something big, you vomited. Elias Thorne felt the pressure the moment the airlock of the Rusty Saint cycled open. It tasted like copper and ozone at the back of his throat. He adjusted the collar of his jacket, concealing the fresh bandage on his shoulder from a graze during the pirate skirmish. Beside him, Kaya stood tall, her tail still. She was wearing a formal tunic they had fabricated on the ship, stark white, militaristic, with the crest of her clan hand-stitched in silver thread. She looked like a blade sheathed in silk. "Ready?" Elias asked, his voice sounding thin in the pressurized air. Kaya touched the base of her neck, where the memory thread pulsed beneath her skin. "I am walking into a courtroom to tear down a government," she said. "I am entirely unprepared. Let us proceed." They left the motley crew of the Rusty Saint to guard the dock. Vax was already narrating their departure to a confused dock worker, and Gorg was threatening to boil anyone who touched the hull. They met the investigator in a secure conference room near the station's core, where the monolith's influence was strongest. Investigator Hearth was a Solarian with moist amphibian skin and eyes that darted nervously. He sat behind a metal table, wringing his long fingers. He looked like a man who had been trying to swallow a lemon whole. "Mr. Thorne," Hearth began, his voice raspy. "We have reviewed your request for an emergency tribunal hearing. The allegations you bring concerning sector war provocation are substantial. They are the truth," Elias said, sitting opposite him. Hearth flinched. He reached for a glass of water, his hand shaking. "The truth is a complicated commodity here," Hearth said. He took a sip, then looked at Kaya. "The tribunal is independent," Hearth said. "We are not beholden to the Coalition or the Trade Federation. However..." He paused, his throat bobbing. He gagged slightly, covering his mouth with a handkerchief. "However?" Kaya prompted, her eyes sharp. "However," Hearth wheezed, wiping his mouth, "we have received significant donations in the last 12 hours. From anonymous benefactors. They suggest that this hearing is a farce. They suggest Mr. Thorne is a trafficker attempting to blackmail the Senate." He looked at them, his eyes watering from the physical nausea of speaking the lie he had been fed. "They are trying to buy the verdict," Elias said flatly. "They are trying to buy the process," Hearth corrected, gasping for air. "They want the hearing to be public. They want to discredit you in front of the galaxy before the evidence is even shown. They are banking on the fact that you, Mr. Thorne, are a documented criminal, and that you, Lady Kaya, are legally property." Kaya leaned forward. The copper taste in the air spiked. "Let them have their public hearing," she said. Hearth blinked. "My lady, they will tear you apart. They will use the indenture contract to silence you. Let them try, Kaya said. A lie cannot survive in the shadow of the monolith, and neither can they. The tribunal chamber was a cavernous amphitheater carved directly into the rock of the asteroid anchor. One wall was transparent, looking out not at stars, but at the black matte surface of the monolith itself. The visual effect was oppressive. The audience felt like they were being watched by the void. The room was packed. Diplomats, traders, refugees, and spies filled the tiered seating. Hovercams buzzed like angry wasps. Elias stood in the center of the floor, feeling the weight of 1,000 eyes. He stood in a railed enclosure designated for the accused. Kaya stood 10 feet away, in the witness circle. The prosecutor was a sleek, corporate lawyer named Valero. He wore a suit that cost more than Elias's entire life earnings, and he had the smug assurance of a man who knew the judge's price. Valero paced the floor, holding up a data pad. "Members of the tribunal," Valero began, his voice amplified by the acoustics of the stone. "We are here to discuss a conspiracy, but the only conspiracy here is one of extortion." He pointed a manicured finger at Elias. "This man is not a savior. He is a buyer." A hologram sprang to life in the center of the room. It was the receipt from the Kestrel spindle auction. It showed the date, the amount, and the item description: Vulpine female, indenture contract, ownership transfer, Elias Thorne. Valero turned to the crowd. He claims to be protecting her, yet he holds her leash. He paid 20,000 credits for her life. By all statutes of interstellar law, she is his asset, and an asset cannot testify against the partners of its owner's rivals. Elias gripped the railing. He felt the sickness rising in his throat, not from a lie, but from the twisted truth. He had bought her. The paper trail was real. Valero turned to Kaya. "Tell us, asset, did he purchase you?" Kaya stood motionless. Her tail was still, her ears forward. She looked at Elias, then at Valero. "He paid the price," she said clearly. Valero smiled. "Thank you. No further questions." "I am not finished," Kaya said. Her voice rang out, cutting through Valero's smugness. She stepped out of the witness circle. A murmur went through the crowd. "He paid the price," Kaya repeated, walking toward the prosecutor. "But you misunderstand the nature of the transaction." She stopped in the center of the room, turning to face the tribunal judges, 3 masked figures sitting on a raised dais. "He did not buy a slave," she declared. "He bought a chain." Valero scoffed. "Semantics." "It is not semantics," Kaya shouted, her composure cracking to reveal the fire beneath. "It is the difference between possession and devotion." She pointed at Elias. "This man spent everything he had to keep me from the hands of your clients. He offered me freedom in a dark corridor, and I refused it." She scanned the crowd, her gaze fierce. "He does not own me. I chose him. I serve him tonight not because his name is on a data pad, but because he is the only man in this sector who was willing to bleed for a stranger." Valero laughed, but he winced, rubbing his temple. The monolith was punishing his cynicism. "Touching," Valero sneered. "But legal ownership is absolute. Unless you can prove that this contract is invalid, unless you can prove that your sale was a crime against the Sentient Rights Acts, you are property, and property has no voice." "You want proof?" Kaya asked softly. She reached up and unbuttoned the collar of her white tunic. She exposed the glowing blue bioport at the base of her neck. "I carry the proof in my nervous system," she said. "I carry the voice of the senator who sold me. I carry the orders of the corporation that wants to breed my people like livestock." She looked at the judges. "I petition the tribunal for a direct interface. A public memory thread projection. The head judge leaned forward. That is a Class A risk. Witness. A raw projection could burn out your synapses. It could kill you. Kaya looked at Elias. He was gripping the rail so hard his knuckles were white. He shook his head slightly. Don't do it. Kaya smiled at him. It was the same smile she had given him on the mudlark right before the mine exploded. Survival later, she whispered. Truth now. She looked back at the judge. I accept the risk. Connect me. The lights in the chamber dimmed. A heavy cable descended from the ceiling, snaking toward Kaya. She took the connector. She didn't hesitate. She jammed it into the port on her neck. She screamed. It wasn't a vocal scream, it was a physical reaction to the sudden intrusion of the station's massive data core into her biological mind. Her back arched, her knees hitting the stone floor. Elias vaulted the railing. He didn't care about the guards, and he didn't care about the procedure. He ran to her, sliding on his knees to catch her before she collapsed completely. Kaya. He held her upright. Her eyes were rolled back, glowing with a terrible blue light. Her body was vibrating. Hold me, she gasped, her voice distorted. Anchor me. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her tight against his chest, grounding her with his own heartbeat. Then, the hologram projector in the center of the room exploded with light. It wasn't a flat image. It was a volumetric reconstruction of Kaya's memory. The entire chamber was suddenly overlaid with the interior of the black site laboratory. The audience gasped. They were suddenly sitting inside the cages. Huge magnified images of Vulpine children floated in the air. Their eyes were vacant. Wires trailed from their skulls. A voice boomed through the chamber, the voice of Senator Varick. The compliance rate is 80%. The rejects are to be liquidated. Another voice, the CEO of Omnicorp. Liquidated? That is a waste of biomass. Process them for organ harvesting. We can sell the eyes on the rim. The sickness in the room was palpable. The monolith was amplifying the truth of the atrocity. People in the audience were weeping. Some were vomiting. Valero, the prosecutor, had collapsed into his chair, clutching his head as the sheer weight of the evil crushed against the monolith's moral field. The scene shifted, the false flag plan. The refugee corridor on Sector 4. We hit it at 1900 hours. We blame the Vulpine insurgents. The coalition will have no choice but to authorize the fleet. The date on the plan flashed in the air. Today. The projection cut out. Kaya slumped in Elias's arms, smoke curling faintly from the port on her neck. The chamber was plunged back into silence, save for the sobbing of the crowd. Then, a metallic voice boomed from the upper gallery. This is why consent forms are important. Father Circuit was standing on a balcony waving his stolen stole. You cannot harvest organs without a signed waiver. It is a bureaucratic sin. 2 security guards tackled the droid, dragging him away as he shouted about the theology of paperwork. The humor was brief, shattered instantly by the sound of gunfire. It didn't come from the guards. It came from the VIP box. 3 men in dark suits, the anonymous benefactors, stood up. They weren't just observers. They were the cleanup crew. Kill the fox, one of them shouted. They raised suppression rifles. Elias didn't think, he didn't calculate. He moved. He spun Kaya around, shielding her body with his own, just as the air filled with the whine of magnetic accelerators. He felt the impact. It was like being hit by a sledgehammer. A high-velocity slug caught him in the back, punching through his jacket and the Kevlar weave beneath. He grunted, his legs buckling. He fell forward, taking Kaya with him to the floor behind the low stone wall of the witness circle. Elias! Kaya screamed. Chaos erupted. The crowd stampeded. Security guards returned fire at the assassins. The noise was deafening. Elias lay on the cold stone, gasping. His back felt like it was on fire. He couldn't feel his legs. Kaya hovered over him. Her eyes were wide, panicked. She pressed her hands to his wound, her white tunic instantly staining red. No, she wept. No, no, no. You do not get to do this. You do not get to be the martyr. Elias coughed, tasting blood. Did they see it? He wheezed. They saw it. Kaya sobbed. They saw everything. Good, Elias whispered. A shadow fell over them. One of the assassins had flanked the position. He leaped over the railing, landing inside the circle. He raised a pistol, aiming at Elias's head. Target acquired, the assassin said. Kaya looked up. The panic in her eyes vanished. The grief vanished. What replaced it was something so primal, so terrifyingly old, that even the assassin paused. Her ears flattened until they were invisible against her silver hair. Her lips peeled back, revealing every millimeter of her teeth. A low, vibrating growl started in her chest, a sound that wasn't human, wasn't civilized, and certainly wasn't diplomatic. She didn't use a weapon. She used herself. She launched off Elias's chest. She moved faster than the eye could follow, a blur of white and red. She hit the assassin before he could pull the trigger. She slammed into his chest, claws fully extended, tearing through the tactical fabric of his suit. They went down in a tangle of limbs. The gun skittered away. The assassin reached for a knife. Kaya broke his arm. The sound of the bone snapping was loud enough to be heard over the screaming crowd. She didn't stop. She was a whirlwind of fury. She was the chain warden, and someone had touched her charge. She ended it with a single, brutal strike to the throat. The assassin went still. Kaya stood up, breathing hard. Her white tunic was ruined. Her hands were dripping. She looked around, daring anyone else to approach. The remaining assassins were being pinned down by station security. The threat in the immediate circle was neutralized. She fell back to her knees beside Elias. She cradled his head in her lap, ignoring the blood that soaked into her fur. She was shaking violently now, the adrenaline crash hitting her hard. "Elias," she whispered, "stay with me." Elias blinked, his vision graying at the edges. "I'm here," he rasped. She leaned down, pressing her forehead against his. "Tonight, I serve," she whispered, the words trembling. But it wasn't the old vow. It changed. "Tonight I serve, forever, if you live." She gripped his shirt, pulling him closer. "Don't leave me with only revenge. Elias, I don't want to be the avenger anymore. I want to be the partner. Please." Elias tried to smile. It was weak, but it was there. "I'm hard to kill," he muttered. Suddenly, the blast doors at the top of the chamber blew inward. A squad of heavy troopers marched in. They wore the dark blue armor of the Sector Navy. At their head walked Commander Vance. He looked impeccable, unflappable. He surveyed the chaos, the dead assassins, the weeping crowd, the bleeding hero, and the feral fox girl. "Secure the room," Vance barked. The troopers fanned out, disarming the station security and the remaining assassins alike. They formed a perimeter around the witness circle. Vance walked down the steps, his boots clicking on the stone. He stopped at the railing, looking down at Elias and Kaya. "A medic!" Kaya screamed at him. "He needs a medic!" Vance signaled to one of his troopers, who moved forward with a trauma kit. Vance looked at Elias, a flicker of regret in his eyes. "You made a mess, Elias," Vance said quietly. "I exposed the mess." Elias coughed, wincing as the medic injected a coagulant into his wound. Vance sighed. He looked at the monolith, then rubbed the bridge of his nose. He looked nauseous. I have been playing both sides. Elias. The admission made Vance grimace, his stomach clearly rolling from the monolith's influence. I took Varric's money to fund my fleet. I took Omnicorp's tech to upgrade my ships. I thought I could control them. I thought I could use their corruption to keep order. He looked at the dead assassin. I was wrong. They are going to burn the sector to cover their tracks. He knelt down, bringing his face level with Elias. I can save you, Elias. I can get you both out of here. I have a medical bay on the Aegis. I can wipe your criminal record. I can give you your life back. Elias looked at him. What is the price? Vance looked at Kaya. She goes into protective custody, deep storage, no trials, no testimony. She disappears. Kaya went rigid. You want to bury the witness? She hissed. I want to prevent a civil war. Vance snapped. If she testifies, the coalition collapses, the Rim revolts, millions die. He looked back at Elias. Give me the girl. Elias, you walk away free. She stays alive. The war is averted. It is the only logical choice. Elias looked at Vance. Then he looked up at Kaya. She was watching him. She wasn't begging. She wasn't arguing. She was just waiting. She was letting him choose. Elias reached into his jacket pocket. His hand was shaking. Blood slicked. He pulled out the data pad. The screen was cracked, smeared with red. He tapped the screen. It took 3 tries because his fingers were numb. He held it up to Vance. I have a counteroffer. Elias wheezed. He tapped the execute button. A chime rang out from the pad. Contract terminated. Asset released. Elias dropped the pad on the stone floor. She is free, Elias said, his voice gaining strength. Vance stared at the pad. That doesn't change anything. I still need to take her. Elias reached into his other pocket. He pulled out a stylus and a crumpled piece of paper, a standard station napkin he had written on earlier in the ready room. He smoothed it out against his leg. It was a handwritten contract, crude, but legal. Mutual partnership agreement. Parties, Elias Thorne and Kaya. Terms, equal share of liability, equal share of command, joint custody of all evidence. Elias signed it. The scrawl was messy, but legible. He handed the pen to Kaya. Kaya took it. She didn't hesitate. She signed her name with a flourish right below his. Elias held the napkin up to Vance. She isn't an asset, Commander. She is my partner. And under coalition law, you can't separate legal partners without a warrant from a high court. He glared at Vance. If you want her, you have to take me too. And if you take us, you have to take the evidence we just broadcast to half the galaxy. Vance looked at the napkin. He looked at the hologram of the cages still flickering above them. He looked at the crowd, who were now filming everything. He looked at the monolith. He tried to speak. He tried to say, I can still arrest you. He gagged. He doubled over, retching dryly. He couldn't lie. Not here. Not now. Vance straightened up, wiping his mouth. He looked defeated. You stubborn son of a bitch, Vance muttered. He stood up and turned to his troopers. Secure the exits. No one leaves. We are locking down this station. He looked back at Elias. The false flag attack has been accelerated. My comms just picked up the signal. They are launching the strike on the refugee corridor in 20 minutes. Vance's face hardened. You want to be partners? Fine. Get up. We have a war to stop. Elias grabbed Kaya's hand. He groaned, gritting his teeth as he forced himself to stand. The medic had stopped the bleeding, but the pain was a living thing. He swayed. Kaya caught him. She wrapped her arm around his waist, taking his weight. I have you, she whispered. Elias looked at her. Her face was streaked with blood and tears, but her eyes were clear. "We are going to stop them," he asked. Kaya looked at the digital clock on the wall. The numbers were counting down. "We have 20 minutes, she said. She looked at Vance, then back at the crowd, and finally at Elias. "Lead the way." "Partner," she said. The alarms of the station began to blare, a mournful sound that echoed off the black stone of the monolith. The truth was out, but the lie was already in motion, and the final choice had to be made in the dark. The stolen interceptor screamed through the void, a jagged sliver of black metal cutting through the starlight. Elias Thorne fought the controls, his hands white-knuckled on the yoke as the ship shuddered against the gravitational shear of the sector. "We are coming in too hot," Elias shouted over the roar of the atmospheric stabilizers. "The heat shield is going to strip. Let it strip," Kaya yelled back from the co-pilot seat. She was typing furiously on the stolen nav computer, her eyes reflecting the scrolling streams of orange data. "If we slow down, the refugee convoy dies. If we burn up, we die. I prefer the scenario where only 2 people vaporize. You have a very morbid definition of preference," Elias grunted, banking the ship hard to the left to avoid a cloud of debris. "It is efficient," she countered, her tail twitching nervously against the side of her seat. "Besides, I thought danger was part of your charm. Isn't that why you bought a rogue diplomat instead of a cargo hauler?" "I bought you because I have a savior complex and poor financial literacy," Elias snapped, checking the proximity sensors. Kaya laughed. It was a sharp, breathless sound, but it cut through the tension in the cockpit. "You are flirting again," she noted. "I am arguing with you," Elias said, wrestling the ship through a pocket of turbulence. "In my observation of human mating rituals, there is a significant overlap," she teased. "You only argue with people you respect, and you only argue this passionately with people you want to survive." Elias looked at her for a split second. Her face was illuminated by the dashboard lights, fierce, terrified, and beautiful in a way that made his chest ache. "Only with you," he admitted, his voice dropping. "I only argue like this with you." Kaya's smile softened, losing its edge. "Then argue harder, chainbreaker," she whispered. "Because we are here." Ahead of them, the void opened up into a graveyard. It was the Sargasso Drift, a massive rotating field of derelict ships, crushed satellites, and industrial waste that had been caught in the gravity well of a brown dwarf star. Deep inside the swirling metal storm was the refugee corridor, a narrow lane of stability used by desperate transports fleeing the border conflicts. And hidden inside the thickest part of the scrap belt was the signal source. "It is a black site," Kaya said, reading the sensors. "A mobile command station masquerading as a piece of wreckage. That is where they will launch the false flag drones from." Elias engaged the stealth drive. The interceptor went dark, sliding into the debris field like a shadow. The gravity here was wrong. The brown dwarf pulled at them, while the artificial gravity fields of the massive dead cruisers pushed back. The ship groaned as it navigated the invisible tides, and there was something else, a hum. A low, resonant vibration that wasn't sound, but pressure. "Do you feel that?" Elias asked, rubbing his temple. "The monolith," Kaya said, her ears flattening. "We are far from Argo Meridian, but the station's amplifier is broadcasting the effect. It is faint, like a radio signal on the edge of range. But the moral pressure is here. It tastes like copper." They docked the interceptor manually against the hull of a massive, hollowed-out megacorp freighter. The airlock cycled with a rusty scream. Elias drew his pistol. Kaya extended her claws. They moved into the belly of the beast. The interior of the black site was a nightmare of shifting gravity plates and humming alien tech. The conspirators had built their facility inside the corpse of the old ship, grafting sleek, white laboratories onto the rusted bulkheads. They encountered resistance almost immediately. Automated sentry droids hovering in the corridors. Elias took them out with precise, silenced shots, moving with the efficiency of a man who had nothing left to lose. Kaya moved like smoke, disabling the electronic locks and jamming the alarm frequencies. They reached the central control node. It was a sphere of glass suspended in the center of the freight hold, surrounded by banks of servers. There, Kaya pointed, the launch protocols. On the main screen, a countdown was ticking. T-minus 10 minutes. Target Refugee Convoy 77 Alpha. Weapon Vulpine signature drones, and we have to jam the signal, Elias said, rushing to the console. He jacked his datapad into the terminal. Kaya stood guard at the door, her senses dialed to maximum. Elias worked fast, his fingers flying over the keys. I can't stop the launch, he cursed. It is hardwired, but I can scramble the targeting data. I can make the drones detonate harmlessly in deep space. Do it, Kaya said. Elias bypassed the first firewall, then the second. He was in. Then the screen flashed red. Access denied. Biometric override required. It's locked to a specific genetic signature, Elias said. Panic rising. I can't bypass this. Kaya stepped forward. Try mine. What? My memory thread, she said. It contains the biometric data of the senator and the CEO. I recorded their signatures when I stole the files. If I interface with the console, I might be able to trick the system into thinking I am Varric. It is dangerous, Elias warned. Do it, she commanded. She pulled the connector cable from the console and jammed it into the port on her neck. The reaction was instant, but it wasn't what they expected. Kaya didn't just interface. She froze. Her body went rigid as a board. Her eyes snapped wide open, the pupils dilating until her eyes were entirely black. Kaya? Elias said, reaching for her. A voice boomed through the room. It didn't come from the speakers. It came from Kaya's vocal cords, but it wasn't her voice. It was a synthesized mechanical monotone. Asset detected. Serial number 499 Gamma. Control protocol initiated. Elias froze. What is that? A hologram flickered to life in the center of the sphere. It was Senator Varric, flanked by Commander Vance and a third figure, Investigator Harth from the Tribunal. Harth looked sick, clutching his stomach, but Varric looked triumphant. Mr. Thorne. Varric's voice sneered from the hologram. Did you really think you could buy a piece of state technology and just walk away with it? Elias grabbed Kaya's shoulders. She was cold, vibrating with a low, electrical hum. Kaya, Elias shouted, snap out of it. She is not going to answer you, Varric said. You see, the indenture contract you bought was not just a legal document. It was a license key. Every Vulpine in the diplomatic corps is fitted with a subdermal compliance chip. It ensures that if they are ever compromised, we can recall them. Varric smiled, a shark showing its teeth. We have the command phrase, Mr. Thorne. I have it. Vance has it. And our friend Harth here, who kindly updated us on your location, has verified the frequency. Elias looked at Vance in the hologram. The commander wouldn't meet his eyes. You knew. Elias accused. You knew she had a kill switch. I tried to get you to hand her over, Vance said, his voice heavy. I tried to spare you this. Spare me what? Elias roared, watching her turn into a puppet. Varric stepped forward in the projection. Asset 499 Gamma. Varric commanded, Nox Eterna. Silence the interloper. The words hit Kaya like a physical blow. She convulsed, a scream tearing from her throat. She spun around, facing Elias, her claws extended. Her face was a mask of agony, but her body was moving with a lethal, programmed fluidity. Run, She gasped, her own voice breaking through the mechanical overlay for a split second. Elias, run! She lunged. Elias threw himself backward, dodging the swipe that would have taken his head off. Her claws shredded the console behind him. Kaya! Stop! Elias yelled, scrambling over the desk. She didn't stop. She vaulted the desk, her movements jerky and unnatural, fighting her own muscles. I can't. She choked out. Get out! Elias backed against the glass wall of the sphere. She was cornering him. She was the perfect weapon, and she was pointed right at his heart. He raised his gun, but he couldn't fire. He couldn't shoot her. He looked at the hologram. Varric was laughing. Kill him. Asset. Varric ordered. Then reset the targeting computer. Kaya raised her hand for the killing strike. Her arm was shaking. Tears streamed down her face, but the limb moved inexorably downward. Elias dropped his gun. He didn't run. He stepped forward. He grabbed her wrists. She snarled, the chip forcing a predatory aggression, but he held on. Look at me, he commanded. Kaya's eyes were frantic, warring between the black void of the program and the amber warmth of her soul. This ends here, Elias said. We are not running, and you are not serving them. He looked at the console. The connection cable was still plugged into her neck. He looked at the data pad he had jacked in earlier. He had an idea. It was insane. It was likely to kill them both. But it was the only card he had left. The monolith, Elias said. Kaya's head twitched. Monolith? The broadcast, Elias shouted. We route the control signal through the station's amplifier. We push the command phrase through the truth-ache field. If they are lying about owning you, Elias explained, dodging a snap of her jaws. The feedback will shatter the protocol. A lie cannot exist in the signal. Kaya's eyes widened. She understood. She screamed as her arm tried to break his grip, but she nodded. Connect. It, she shrieked. Elias released her left hand and lunged for the console. Kaya's right hand raked across his chest, tearing his shirt and drawing blood. But she fought the blow enough to miss his throat. Elias punched the command into the terminal. Root signal, Argo Meridian Relay. Filter, monolith frequency. He hit enter. The hologram of Varric flickered. What are you doing? Varric demanded. Elias grabbed the microphone. Say it again, Elias yelled at the senator. You want a controller? Say the command, Varric sneered. Nox Eterna. Silence the moment he spoke the command, a command based on the lie that she was property, the signal hit the monolith's distortion field. The feedback loop was catastrophic. In the control sphere, the speakers exploded. Sparks showered from the ceiling. Kaya arched her back, a sound tearing from her throat that was half scream, half roar. The blue light of the bioport turned a blinding, burning white. The lie collided with the biological truth of her memory thread. The alien tech of the monolith interacted with the Vulpine vow frequency embedded in her culture. She fell to her knees, clutching her head. The hologram of Varric distorted. On the other end, wherever they were, the conspirators were screaming. The feedback was hitting them too. The psychosomatic backlash of a lie amplified 1,000 times. Kaya looked up. Her eyes were glowing with the white fire of the monolith. She wasn't fighting the protocol anymore. She was rewriting it. She grabbed the cable with both hands. She didn't pull it out. She drove it deeper. You purchased my chain, she whispered, her voice amplified by the station's speakers, booming across the entire sector. The automated system tried to override her. Error. Compliance failure. She stood up, the white light engulfing her. But I am the one who breaks it, she roared. She spoke the counter-vow. It wasn't a pre-programmed code. It was a declaration of absolute, terrifying will. Tonight, I serve myself. The console exploded. A shockwave of energy blasted outward, shattering the glass sphere. Elias was thrown back, hitting the wall hard. When he looked up, the smoke was clearing. The hologram was gone. The countdown on the screen was frozen at 0003. The drones had not launched. The signal had been purged. And standing in the center of the wreckage was Kaya. She was swaying. The bioport on her neck was smoking. The blue light faded to a dull, lifeless gray. She had burned out the chip. She had fried the receiver. She turned to look at Elias. She took one step and then crumbled. Elias scrambled to her, catching her before she hit the deck. Kaya? She blinked. Her eyes were amber again. Just amber. No black, no white fire. Did I get them? She whispered. You got them, Elias rasped, holding her tight. You got them all. The broadcast went out. The whole galaxy just heard Varric try to enslave a diplomat. Kaya let out a long, shuddering breath. She rested her head against his chest, listening to his heart. Is it over? She asked. The immediate danger? Yes, Elias said. He looked at the tactical display. The news feeds were already lighting up. The scandal was instantaneous. Governments were recalling ambassadors. Warrants were being issued not just for Varric, but for everyone involved, including us, Elias said quietly. We stole an interceptor. Kaya listed, her voice weak but returning to its dry wit. We broke into a black site. We utilized forbidden alien tech, and we effectively dissolved the coalition government. Elias smiled. A busy night. Kaya pulled back slightly. She looked at him. Her face was bruised, her hair matted, her uniform in tatters. She looked like the survivor of a war, which she was. She reached up and touched the claw marks on his chest, the marks she had made. Elias, she said. Her voice held no humor now. The whole galaxy knows what happened, but they also know I was a weapon. They saw me try to kill you. They know I can be triggered. She looked down. They will call you a trafficker. They will call me a monster. There is no going back to the way it was. We will be running for the rest of our lives. She looked up, her eyes searching his. Do you still want this? Do you still want me? Elias looked at her. He looked at the woman who had fought a programming code with sheer force of will just to save him. He took her hand, the hand that had almost ended his life moments ago, and pressed it to his heart. Kaya, he said softly, love without freedom is just another cage. I don't want a safe life. I don't want a quiet life. He leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. I want you, but only if you keep choosing me, every day, even when it is hard, even when we are running. Kaya stared at him. A tear slipped down her cheek, cutting a clean line through the grime. She closed her eyes, and for the first time since the auction block, she looked truly, completely peaceful. I choose you, she whispered, today, tomorrow, and until the stars burn out. Elias smiled. Then let's get out of here. Partner. The escape was not graceful. It was a scramble of stolen fuel cells, hasty repairs, and a reckless jump into hyperspace just as the Coalition Navy remnants arrived to secure the site. They didn't go back to the Rusty Saint. That life was done. They didn't go to the tribunal. That book was closed. They went to the frontier. 3 weeks later, on a nameless moon in the outer rim, a small, battered transport ship sat on a ridge overlooking a nebula. Inside, Elias Thorne sat in the pilot's chair watching the news feed. The headlines were chaotic. Varric arrested. Omnicorp assets frozen. Sector war averted. And below that, wanted, the Chainbreaker and the Fox. Elias laughed softly. He turned off the screen. He walked to the back of the ship. The cargo bay was open to the night air. Kaya was sitting on the edge of the ramp, her legs dangling over the precipice. She was watching the nebula swirl in colors of violet and gold. She wore simple clothes now, a pilot's jacket and rugged pants. The bioport scar on her neck was fading, a thin white line against her pale skin. Elias sat beside her. He didn't say anything. He just took her hand. She squeezed it. Her tail curled around his leg, warm and heavy. They sat there for a long time, two fugitives at the edge of the known universe. They were broke. They were hunted. They had enemies in every system, and they had never been freer. You know, Kaya murmured, looking at the stars. What? Elias asked. She turned to him. Her eyes sparked with that familiar, dangerous glint, playful, fierce, and entirely her own. You purchased my chain, she said softly. Elias smiled, squeezing her hand, and I broke it. Kaya leaned in, her lips brushing his ear. Tonight, I serve, she whispered, because I decide what that means. She pulled back, laughing as Elias pulled her into a kiss, their laughter echoing into the dark corridor of stars, a sound of defiance, of joy, and of a choice made freely in the dark.